Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Beginner's Guide to Video Editing in Premiere Pro series. Today's video is a step-by-style guide to mastering text in Premiere Pro. So, without much further ado, let's get started with the video. And what we are going to do is to create a simple text style and save it for future use. Start by selecting the text tool. Then I'm going to type Beginner's Guide. Premiere Pro has simplified everything. While working with text and graphics, you can change your workspace to caption and graphics. But if you don't want to do that, like me who love working with all panels, you can still find the Essential Graphics panel right here. And if it's not here, you can go up to Window, then Essential Graphics. Clicking on Essential Graphics, I can find the text right here and all of its properties which you can stylize. I'm going to center align the text by moving down and clicking on center align, which you can also right align, left align, and center align the text. Position it at the dead center. So I'm going to move up, which is to align and transform. This will align it vertically to the center and horizontally to the center. And you can move this upward like so. So this is for the position. Then this is for the scale, which you can scale it up or down. Also, we have the opacity, which you can reduce the opacity of the text. You can also control all of these movement, scale, and opacity in the effect and controls, and all of the properties are here. You have the position, the scale, the rotation, and down below you have the opacity. One thing I didn't mention was the scale. So you have this chain icon here. If you click on the chain, it will separate the width from the height. That's why you see that it's been stretched upward. That's because the height is set to 137 and the width is set to 100. So you can change this to 100 and everything will be equal. So that's just something you can keep in mind while working with scale property. Let's move down to choosing the fonts and everything. I will change the fonts to Real and I'm going to make this to be black and italic. Then make it to be all caps by clicking on all caps right here. For the fill, I'm going to give it a gradient fill, and this is where we can change the color. I can click on fill, then give it any color. And to give this, let's say you want a linear gradient or radial gradient, you can also do this here. So clicking on this will give it a linear gradient. I'm going to select this first handle to set the first color, which I'm just going to allow it to white. For the second color, I'm going to give it a black color. That's just for simplicity's sake. Let me move this so we can see what we're working with. So that's it, and we can move this around so that it's suitable for what we want. So if I move this to this direction, it will become more darker, and if I move this, the white will have more intensity on it, and I think this is quite okay. And we also have the angle, and for this angle is just to change the angle in which the linear gradient has an effect on the text. So if I set this, let's say to 30, you see how the gradient has changed. Let me click on OK, then zoom in on the text and do that again so you can see it very well. Let me set this back to 19. You see it's below, and if I set it to 45, you see the angle changing. So I prefer it at 90 and I'll hit on OK. So that's something you can do. Let me zoom back out and set it to feed. Or let's set it to about 50%. Or better still, let's increase the size of the text. Let me set this to 200 so it's more visible to our eyes. Then set this back to feed. Next, we have the stroke. So you can set the stroke. Before you can choose the stroke color and the stroke width, let me expand this so you can see clearly. Before you can set a stroke color and stroke width, you need to make sure that the checkbox beside the stroke is activated so that you have to choose the color. So let me give this a random color, let's say red, and let's just go with blue because red won't really, or something like, let's say so, for just for simplicity's sake, and click on OK. Then for the stroke width, I'm going to set this to 5, and we have a stroke right here, and let's see 10 for the stroke width. Yeah, I think something like this. Then we can also give it a background. Let me just add this, set the background color to let's say blue. Let's make it a light blue and hit on OK. And for the opacity, we can either increase it or decrease it. While working with the background, we can increase the padding, that's the space around the text. So if I set this to 10, you see the space around the text has increased. And better still, 100 will give you more space around the text if that's something you're going for. And you can make these edges to be rounded, as easy as that. Next, we have the shadow. So I'm going to uncheck this box because I don't want the background. And for the shadow, I'm going to set this to white because I'm working on a white background and a black background, sorry, and hit on OK. Then we have other properties here. We have the angle, we have the opacity, and a lot more. As you can see, if you look closely, let me zoom in, you can see the white drop shadow or the shadow, and that's something, if that's something that you want, you can go ahead with it, and you can increase the blurriness, the spacing, and a lot more. You can play around with this to have your specific needs. We can also increase the spacing between the text by changing this value to 200, and for the height, that's the distance between these two texts, we can reduce that and set a negative value of about negative 30, and you've seen the distance reduced. There are a lot more features here that you can play around with just to have some custom features to your text. Let's say we are done editing our text and we want to use this same styling in our next text and we want to apply it easily. We can save this style for future use by going up to these styles, click on these, then create style. So let's call it nice text and OK. Under the program manager, you're going to find the style, and if you right click on it and go to export text styles, you'll be able to choose the location, give it the name, and save the text style. Now I'm going to show you how you can use this text style, but before doing that, I'm going to set everything to default. So let's delete this so that it won't be there, because Premiere Pro automatically choose the text style that you recently worked with. So with this, let's just delete this text and add another text, though it will come with the same styling as I said. So I'm going to remove all of this styling because, as you can see, Premiere Pro automatically apply it to the text. So we don't want the field to have a white color or something like that. Hit on OK. Then for the stroke, we don't want the stroke, and we don't want the shadow, and we don't want it to be all caps. Yeah, I think, let's see, for the spacing in between the text, we want it to be 0, and for the height, we want this to set at 0. So for the fill, we have to first of all change it to solid before we click on OK. That's why it didn't change at the first. Let's give this a text like video editors. I'll go under my project manager, then import the text style that I exported. So double click to do that on an empty space, make sure that that's on an empty space. Then locate where I saved it, double click, and it will automatically add this text style. Same thing, we're going to go under the essential graphics. That's where we are going to locate these styles again. Click on here. Premiere Pro automatically give you the option to select the text style that you created, and that's it. And we can just center align everything, and that's how easy you can work with text styles in Premiere Pro. Now let's create some text box animations in Premiere Pro. I'm going to remove all of the styling of this text. There's one feature that I love about Premiere Pro. That is, if I select this text layer, right, then with the rectangle tool, I can draw a box. Let me go up to essential graphics. You're going to find this shape and the text. Let me turn down the opacity of the box, let's say around here, and bring this below the text layer. That's something fun to do because we are working with two elements in the same layer. So make sure that the box is also centered and the text is centered. So I'm going to add in a video. This is just to make the text box to be visible. I'll select the shape graphics and style it up. For the radius, I'm going to set this to 50. So this will curve out the angles, make it to be round, or even more, let's say about 70. For the size, I think it's too large, so I can reduce the scale. Let's set this to about 80. Yeah, I think that's good. I think the text is okay. So let's start animating. The first thing I'm going to do is to position this inside a group. The second shape, I'm going to position it inside a group, and I'll get to this in a second. So we have the text and then we have the graphics. I'm going to select the group on top, which is the text. Go under the effects panel, search transform, double click to add it. When I move back to the essential graphics, you're going to see the transform effect on top, which I'm going to move to, let's say here inside the graphics. Then select it, press Command C, that's to copy, and Command V to paste. Then position it on top of the shape, that's inside the shape group. With the shape group, I'm going to select the transform effect, and under the effect controls, you're going to see the same transform. The way you differentiate this is that when you select this, you see this is selected and it's labeled group 4, and if I select the one for the text, it's going to change and you'll see group 3, which you can label. You can also rename this just to stay safe, so you can set this to text, then we set this to shape, or let's call it box, like so it's easy to locate. So next, when I select the transform again, we are going to see group box and so on, just for labeling sake and staying organized. Now selecting the layer, I'm moving my playhead right at the start. I'm going to set the first keyframe, that's for the position. Then move some frames ahead around, let's say here, set the second keyframe. And back to the first keyframe, I'm going to move this below around here. For the use composition shooter angle, I'm going to uncheck that. And for the shooter angle, set this to 300. This will make the animation to be blurry, which is something you want to do because it's kind of cool. Select the two keyframes, right click, then go to temporal interpolation and bezel to make the animation to be smooth. Zoom in, let's say around here, move my playhead in between the two keyframes and select the transform effect for the text. Set the first keyframe for the position, move some frames ahead and set in the second keyframe. And back to the first keyframe, we are going to move these, let's say around here. Select the two keyframes, right click and then temporal interpolation and bezel. And same thing, I'm going to uncheck use composition shooter angle and set this to 360. And if done correctly, you're going to have an animation like this. So you can adjust the timing and everything just to make everything to suit on to your taste. And that's how you can easily animate text box. Now let's take this further by first reducing the scale to about 50. Then bringing this a little bit down around here. Still with the text layer selected, I'm going to go to the effects panel, search VR digital glitch, double click to add it. Inside the essential graphics, you're going to find the VR digital glitch on top of everything, and you'll notice that everything is glitched out. And if I move this, let's say inside the text group, just the text will be glitched out, and if I move it inside the box group, just the box will be glitched out. That's why I have everything positioned inside a group so that this transform effect will have an effect just on top of the element inside of that group. And this digital glitch will have an effect on everything inside this layer. With this, I'm going to position my playhead again at the start. That's under the effect controls. Locate the VR digital glitch, set the first keyframe for the point of interest scale and the random speed. Move some frames ahead around here. Set the second keyframe for the random speed and the point of interest scale. So for this, I want the point of interest scale to be at 0. That's for the second keyframe. But for the first keyframes, I want it to be at 100. Then for the random speed, I want it to be at 100. Select the two keyframes, right click, then go to bezel. And you're going to have something like this. This is good when you have so many texts that you want to just animate. This is a very nice concept that you can use, and you can also add images into it. All you need to do is to position it in their various groups so you can easily animate them separately. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to generate auto captions in Premiere Pro and how you can start them up and use for future use. So I have an audio here which we are going to use, and we don't need anything more but just this audio. So I'm going to position my playhead, let's say around here. Let me cut this because I don't want it to be really long. Let's say just something very short. I'm going to locate text, and if you can't find it, as always, go under your window. Then all of these panels, you're going to find the text. Under text, we still have transcript, captions, and graphics. And you need to go under the transcript because you need to transcribe the audio before you can create captions with it. So by default, you're going to find something like transcribe sequence, but I've already transcribed this sequence before, that's why you can't find that option. But when you open it, you're going to see transcribe sequence. So I'm going to click here, then go to retranscribe sequence. Maybe you have audio layers or multiple layers, you can choose mix. But for this, I'm going to choose audio 1 to be precise because I have this audio on audio 1. When Premiere Pro is done doing its thing, you can verify that the text matches up with what you're saying. So you can do this by playing it back. And if it does not matches up, you can just double click, then change the text manually. Very easy to do. After doing all of the adjustment that you want to do, you can click on create captions. Then this is where you're going to start up everything. Starting with a caption preset, you can allow it to subtitle default. But if you have a preset, you can import the preset. Now for the format, you're going to allow it to subtitle. And for the style, you are going to allow it to known for now. Maximum length in characters, I prefer setting this to about, let's say 16. For the maximum duration in seconds, I prefer setting it to 1.6. And for this gap between captions, 0. Lines, single. So I don't want double lines or stuff like that. But if that's something you want, you can go for it and then hit on create. You're going to see the captions here, and under our program monitor we are going to find it here. What I'm going to do is I'll select all of these captions because these are the captions. Under the essential graphics, I'm going to style it up. I'll start by setting a background and I'll remove the shadow because I don't need that. And for the background, I'm going to give it a white background. Then for the text color, I'm going to set this to black and hit on OK. For the space in between these, I'm going to set this to about 20. Move up again, and for the font size I'm going to choose real, and let's say I'll go with extra bold, yeah, something like that, and make these to be all caps. You can use this to position it anywhere on top of your program monitor. So if I click on this, it's going to be positioned at the top left. Then for this, it's going to be positioned at the top right, top center, and so on. So I want it to be at the center of the screen. If you think you don't want it to be really be at the center, you can move this below. So for this, I'm going to set this to 0, so it'll be at the dead center. And I can increase the font size to about 60. That's the perfect size. And that's how easy you can do this. And one thing, the background is not completely white because the opacity is set to 75. So I'm going to set this to 100. And everything looks good. If you have this caption style and you want to use in the future, same thing, you can go to track style, then click on OK, and you will find it here, which you can right click, then go to export text styles and so on, and choose a location like we did for the other text. So I'm going to delete this text, show you how to import these so that each time you don't need to style up everything. Then I'm going to go to transcript. We should see half our transcript here, create captions, then choose the caption style. But again, we have to set everything to what we need, that's 16, 1.6, and then single. So just the style will be copied. So as you can see, everything has been copied. We have this at the center, the color, and everything, the position. Now, one thing you're going to notice is we set this caption style to this, that's all caps, but for this it came as little letters, which is something you can just easily fix by selecting everything, then you set this to all caps, and this will ease your workflow each time you want to create captions. Now, what we can do next is to place text behind a subject in a video. Let me move back to the previous video that we were working with, which is this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just place this text box behind the subject. So I don't want it to be here. I want it to be somewhere around here. Let me start by setting it to the right position. Let's say around here. Then we increase the size. Let me zoom into about, let's say 100. Then move this upward. Or let's say 75% and bring this upward. Selecting the video, I'm going to turn down the opacity. Let's say I will select it, then under the opacity I'm going to set it to about, yeah, I think 20% is okay. Then select the mask tool. I'm selecting the mask tool with the text layer selected, and I'm going to create a mask selecting my subject. So I'm done creating the mask, and as you can see, I created the mask in such a way that it just covers up the text box. Now let me turn back the opacity to 100% so that everything will be well visible. So I'm going to hit on inverted so that the text box will be visible where the mask is not found. You get the idea, because when it's, let's say the inverted box is unchecked, it's visible where the mask is, but when it's checked, it's visible where the mask is not found. That's how I can easily position text behind your subjects. Now there's one thing with masking which this method is not really efficient, and as you can see, the way I selected it, I didn't really take my time. So you can go ahead and take your time to really mask out your subject. As you can see, this is a video, and if I move ahead, everything will change up because it's a video and everything is moving. Now the area that I cut out is not really, you see that the edges won't really match up again because we have moved from the mask area. Let me go back to the same spot. Then we can fix this by selecting the text layer and then move down to the opacity, which we are going to see the mask again, and we hit on track selected masks forward. So if I click on this, Premiere Pro is going to take its time to track the mask moving forward. You can take your time to do this accurate, and I can also track it backward so that it can be accurate enough. But there is a way you can easily do this with After Effects, that's rotoscoping, and I have an entire video explaining how I did that in After Effects using the roto brush tool. So that's how you can easily place text behind your subjects in Premiere Pro using masking, and you can also track the mask to be accurate with what you're doing. So I think I've gone through everything related to text in Premiere Pro. I recently created a community for video editors, and I will leave a link down in the description for you to join. If you have any question related to this video or anything about video editing as a whole, feel free to ask in the community, and I'll personally reply you and guide you on what you need to understand. Hope you found the video useful and interesting. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video to support the channel grow. Thanks for watching, and until the next one, keep editing.